So we're middle of Perek Zayin.
Yeah.
We're on page 164. So last week we spoke about Hayichud Ilah, Hayichud Tata. And the bottom line is that the source of everything that is the Dvar Hashem, is the words of Hashem, which is from Hashem's Midah, the Midah of Malchus, from the Spheres HaMalchus, which that's the source of all the worlds, that's the source of time, that's the source of space. And because Hashem's Midas HaMalchus, the Sphere of Malchus, is absolutely united with the higher spheres, and the higher spheres, Lagabi, the higher spheres, worlds really don't exist. So therefore, this yichud between Malchus and the higher spheres cause a complete bittul of the worlds to Hashem. And as we discussed, there's two possibilities. There's Hayichud Ilah, Hayichud Tata, and these are both, one is where what the main thing is felt is the Ered Mulvadai, another one is where the main thing that's felt is worlds, but that also that they're buttal. But either way, the worlds are completely buttal to Hashem. And with that, let's go inside. V'hinei b'mashin is boyer. Halfway down from the top of the page 164. The first word in the line is l'tachtoinim, right after the period.
Really, 164 where?
Right after the period, halfway down from the top of the page. First word in the line is l'tachtoinim.
Oh, yeah, I see.
V'hinei. V'hinei. B'mashin is boyer, based on everything that we explained up until this point, Yuvan, we can understand the Mashikasuv, that which it says in a pasuk in Malachi, Ani Hashem lo yishanisi. I, Hashem, have never changed. Pirush, which means she'ein shum shinui klal, there is no difference whatsoever in Hashem. Just as He was one and only before the world was created. Nothing changed. Hashem remains the one and only being after the world was created also. And this is what we say in davening. We say, you are the one who was there before the world was created. And you are the same one after the world was created. There is no change whatsoever in the Eibishter's essence and Hashem's essence. The same, you are the same before, you're the same after. And this is obviously something that needs to be understood. We need to make sense out of this, because what does it mean that Hashem didn't change? The fact that suddenly, beforehand there was nothing in existence, and now there is not only our world, but all the worlds, everything was created. How does that not create a change within Hashem? As we know, the biggest change that a person has in their lifetime is when they get married. So what happened? Because there's someone else. There's someone else there that causes incredible change. Maybe you can argue the bigger change is actually not even marriage, is when you have a person has children. The point is, Hashem suddenly has an infinite amount of creations over which He has to now watch over and create at every single moment, especially as Dr. Rebbe already explained, that the Eibishter has to constantly recreate worlds at every moment. So how can we say that this isn't somewhat of a disruption to Hashem's daily schedule? How can we say that Hashem didn't change? Beforehand there was nothing other than Him, and now there are worlds. So how can Hashem say, Ani Hashem lo yishanisi? And moreover, okay, actually, before we get to the moreover, but based on everything that we learned up until now, it actually makes a lot of sense. As long as we perceive the world as existing and as having an independent existence independent of Hashem, so then suddenly beforehand Hashem was alone, He was the only one, and now suddenly there are all these creations. That's a big difference in Hashem, especially since He's in charge of all these creations and He has to watch over them and manage them and everything. But if we're to understand that this quality that we call existence, creation doesn't have it, which is why if at any moment Hashem were to remove His creative energy from the world, the world would cease to exist, because the world does not exist on its own. So the world is being forced into existence at every single moment. By what? By Hashem, by Hashem's words, by the Dvar Hashem. Now the Dvar Hashem's capacity to create always existed. Hashem always had the capacity to exist. Even before he created worlds, Hashem had the capacity to create worlds. So what changed? The capacity to create was always there. The fact that he created things, but those things don't really exist. Even after he creates, the only thing that really exists is his capacity to exist, because all we are is an expression, the actualization of that capacity. So once we understand that, we realize Ani Havaya Leishon Nisi Taka, nothing changed at all. There beforehand there was nothing but Hashem and all his abilities and capabilities and capacities, and the same thing is now. That's really all that exists. And what are we? Extensions of that capacity. We're not anything on our own. So there's nothing new. And then the Alter Rebbe takes it further. And the Alter Rebbe says, not only did Hashem not change, there is no change in Hashem's essence, and also not in Hashem's knowledge. So here you might say, 1 second. After all, beforehand there was nothing to know, and now Hashem has to know all of creation. Alter Rebbe said no. In Hashem's knowledge also, there nothing changed. Why? Ki biyedias atzmo yedeya kol hanivraim. That Hashem, his knowledge of all creations is not a knowledge like when we are aware of something, when we know something, we're aware of something which is outside of us. But Hashem's knowledge, this is something that we've encountered earlier before already in Tanya. Hashem's knowledge, everything that he knows from within himself. And why is that? Because after all, everything comes from Hashem. And everything is bottled b'mitzias to him. So Hashem's knowledge is only from himself. Once again, once we understand that all of existence is only an extension of Hashem, then we understand Hashem's knowledge of existence is his knowledge of himself. So again, nothing changed. There is Hashem himself, and he always was, and now and he's aware of himself. He always was aware of himself, and now he's aware of himself too. The Rambam says, "Shehu haYedeya, v'hu haYedua, v'hu haDeya atzma, haKol echad." Again, this is a topic which the Alter Rebbe returns to often in Tanya. That in the human being, when a person knows something, there are three entities over here. Entity number one is the person. Entity number two is the person's wisdom. Person's power of wisdom, which is involved over here in absorbing this knowledge and this information. Entity number three is this particular piece of information that the person right now has gained. So again, when you understand something, there's the Yodeya. Yodeya is the one who knows, which is the person. And then there's the Mada, which is the person's knowledge. Not this particular knowledge, but we're talking about the faculties of Chachma and Bina, the person's intellectual capabilities. And then there's the Yadua, and the Yadua again being the particular piece of information that the person right now has just learned. And by the human being, all these three things are separate. The Rambam says that by Hashem, all these three are one. Just a little context over here. The Rambam actually brings it down more than once. Once in the Seidiya Torah, he brings down the Seidiya. And again, he brings it down again in Hilchos Tshuva. The Rambam over there asks the famous question that how is it, because in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam, he lays down the foundation of Bechira Chavshis. That we all have free will. We make our own choices, and we're responsible for our own choices, which obviously is very important in terms of tshuva. If I'm doing tshuva, why am I doing tshuva? Because obviously I'm responsible for the bad choices that I made, because I could have chosen otherwise. In other words, if I was compelled to behave in a certain way, so even if I did something wrong, then you can't hold me responsible for it. The whole notion of tshuva is predicated on the idea that I do have choice, and my choice is real and meaningful, and I chose to do something wrong, and I could have chosen to do the right thing. So for example, you have a computer programmer who programs a computer to spread a virus. You're not going to punish the computer. Why aren't you going to punish the computer for spreading the virus? Because the computer doesn't have free choice. It's programmed. So if we were programmed also to behave in a certain way, as the Rambam says, like those tipshim, like those fools who think that some people are just born to be tzaddikim and some people are born to be rishayim, if that were the case, then there wouldn't be a count. The whole idea of reward and punishment would be one big farce. And also the idea of tshuva wouldn't apply. So the Rambam puts down this big yisoid, and that is that we have free choice, which is the opposite of what we call today determinism. Determinism means that our actions and behaviors are determined in advance. So here we have the big question. I'm sure everyone here has heard the question. If we believe that Hashem is aware in advance of everything that will happen, so He knows what we will do, so how do we have free choice? Then aren't we compelled to act in the manner that Hashem already knows in advance that we will act? What I'm going to do is known to Hashem. So I don't have a choice to do otherwise. So how can you say that I have free choice?
Famous question.
Yeah, the very famous question. How do you reconcile free choice with the concept of preordination or the Hashem's knowledge of what's going to happen? And while many different answers have been suggested to this question, including some of the Noisei Kelim, the Mefarshim, the commentaries on the Rambam ultimately, he says, trying to understand this is foolish. Why? Because we have a certain frame of reference in terms of our knowledge. When we know something, as we just explained, there's the Yidea, and there's the Mada, and there's the Yadua. There's the knower, there's the knowledge, and there's information. By Hashem, all these are one. And therefore, what that means, because when we talk about Hashem being one, it means that not like the human being, even after, let's say I learned 2 + 2 is 4. So am I a single being? Yeah. There's me, there's my wisdom, and there's this knowledge of 2 + 2 is 4, but I'm still one being. However, I'm not absolute oneness. I am, a human being is a composite oneness. We are a one that we are very complicated and very sophisticated and very nuanced. We have so many different elements to us, both physically and emotionally. But Hashem, when we say He's one, we're talking about absolute unity. So Hashem, there's absolute unity. So when Hashem knows something, it's all unity, and therefore His knowledge is b'yedias atzmai. And this is something which we can't even begin to understand. We can't begin to comprehend this. And why is this the case? Because because Hashem is one with His knowledge, and therefore just as Hashem is infinite and unfathomable, we cannot understand Hashem, so we can't understand His knowledge also. So trying to apply our rules to Hashem's knowledge is nonsensical. As the Rambam says, you're saying that Hashem's knowledge compels you to behave in a certain way. You're implying some sort of understanding of Hashem's knowledge, and you have no understanding of Hashem's knowledge because you're a human being. And therefore, the Rambam says we have to believe. We have to Vehaemunah. We believe that Hashem knows everything in advance. At the same time, we believe that we absolutely have free choice. And how do we reconcile this? We don't try. We don't try to reconcile this. Rather, we accept that Hashem's knowledge is so much greater than our knowledge and completely removed from our experience. In other words, not like if you ever bump into a very, very smart person who's maybe a member of Mensa and has an IQ of 180 or even 220, so you say, this person is so much smarter than me. When we talk about Hashem, we don't say that Hashem is smarter than us, but it's qualitatively different than us. It's just like you don't say that you're smarter than a piece of wood. So to say that Hashem is smarter than me is like saying I'm smarter than a piece of wood, which is implying that we have some sort of comparable intelligence and I'm greater. No, there is no comparable intelligence between me and a piece of wood. And the same thing is us to Hashem, so any sort of comparison doesn't make any sense. And this concept of b'yedias atzmai, that Hashem's knowledge of everything is based on the knowledge of Himself, which the Rambam says, we can actually make a little sense of that based on what we're talking about over here. As long as the world is perceived as something which is outside of Hashem, and then you're saying, so Hashem knows the world. He knows everything that's going on in the world, but how does He know what's going on in the world based on Himself? How does that make sense? The world is outside of him. If the world is outside of him, how does Hashem know everything that's happening through self-knowledge? But once we've established this principle, which is that there is nothing outside of Hashem, and ani Hashem leishanisi, nothing has changed. That just like Hashem was the only one before the world was created, Hashem is the only one now. Worlds exist. No, what's the answer to that?
Just
worlds don't exist, right? The worlds don't exist.
Reflection of,
we are just right
of His goodwill.
We are an expression of Hashem's creative power, of the Asar Mamaris.
Just an expression.
So worlds don't have an existence of their own.
Like the projected.
Like the projector, exactly.
You see the picture, but it's only just a projection.
Exactly. So so let's go by. Would you say? Theoretically, let's say the projector had consciousness, had awareness. So would you say that how is the projector aware of the picture of the picture on the wall? Well, it looks at the wall and knows what the picture is. No, the projector doesn't need to look at the wall to know what the picture is, because the picture on the wall is only an expression
of himself,
of the projector. The Eibishter is the projector. The Eibishter doesn't have to look at the picture, doesn't have to look at the world to be able to gain awareness of what's going on. B'yidiyas by self-knowledge. Why? Because he's the projector. And once we understand this, then we understand that the Eibishter, it's a different ballgame, because everything about the Eibishter is absolute unity, and we are mere projections of Hashem's absolute unity. And let's do this inside. Start again. The Rambam writes, Shehu Hayideya. He is the knower. V'hu Yadua. He is the knowledge. V'hu Yadua. He is the information that is known. V'hu Adeya Atzma, and he is also the knowledge. Hakoil Echad. By Hashem, everything's absolute unity. And the Rambam himself says, V'davar zeh, this concept, Ein koyach b'peh lo'imrei. The mouth doesn't have the power to say it. Okay, although we're saying it, but in other words, to say it in an intelligible manner. V'loi bo'ezin l'shamai, the ear is incapable of hearing it. V'loi b'leiv ha'adam lahakiri al buriyai. And it is not within the capability of the heart of the human to properly, to be able to truly recognize this. Because Hashem, His essence and His das, His wisdom, all is one. Mamish, literally, Mikol Sadu Pina, from every side, from every corner. B'chol derech yichud, in any type of unity possible. Hashem's knowledge is not imposed upon, an add-on upon His essence, as is the case in the human being. Our knowledge is something which is in addition to our essence. But rather it is murkav, it is
a hybrid.
Yeah, murkav, it's a hybrid, it's mixed together.
Mixed together, yeah.
And the word mixed is the wrong word. Murkav means it's they're joined, but joined in a very deep way. In other words, us and our knowledge, like murkav is like a hybrid fruit. Like when you have, if you take a
asterisk, they say built in murkav.
Right. So what? But are there other examples of fruit today that are hybrids?
A grapefruit.
No, I don't think. There's, I think, a nectarine. No, isn't a nectarine a hybrid?
A nectarine, yeah. Peach and a plum.
There's a peach and a plum. Okay, so which part is peach and which part is plum?
There's no parts. It's all
okay, murkav means what something, but at the end of the day, it is two things coming together. And the same thing is by us. Yes, we are one with our knowledge. In a very, very intimate way, we're one with our knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's not achdus pshuta. It's not complete unity, but it's achdus, which is murkav. In other words, it's ultimately we're a composite of these two things. Shaar, and what's the proof of it? When you learn and understand something, so you existed, and your knowledge existed before you knew it. And after you've gained a certain piece of information, now you've added this piece of information onto yourself. And that's what happens on a daily basis. We learn new things. Yamim, as it says in Eyev, Yamim yidaberu v'reiv shanim yediu chachma. That every single day has its own message, and with many years, we gain a lot of wisdom. But this is not a complete unity. Rather, this is I am becoming one with this knowledge. but I existed before I had this knowledge. And by the way, theoretically, I can exist now without the knowledge. I can forget it. I can forget what I learned. It doesn't become part of
An integral part.
an integral part of who I am. On the other hand, Hashem, who Achdus Pashu, the Eibishter is complete Achdus. Belishum Harkava, Vitzad Ribi Klal. There's nothing added onto him. There's nothing grafted into him. V'im kein, and if so, al karachach, we must say, Hashem is absolutely one with his das, with his knowledge. Belishum Harkava, lefichach, therefore, Gishem Shiyav Shalushum Nivra Ba'elam. Because Hashem is absolutely one with his das, just like no creation can understand the essence of the creator of Atzmusay, kach, the same thing, we cannot understand also Hashem's knowledge. Rak. The only thing we can do is lahamin Vehaemunah, to believe with an amunah which is higher than seichel and higher than what we can grasp. That Hashem is one and absolute oneness. V'daite, and him together with his knowledge, hakoil echad mamish, all is absolute oneness. And therefore, his knowledge of everything that exists is through self-knowledge. Everything that exists, el yonim v'tachtoinim, the higher worlds, the lower worlds, ad shilshul katan shebayom, to a small little creature which is in the sea. Not sure exactly what a shilshul is, but I believe in the Gemara it's brought on, that's the smallest creature that exists. Vad yitush katan, and even to a small mosquito. Sheyih betabar ha'aretz, which is burrowing around in the belly of the earth. Ein davar na'al mimenu. Nothing is hidden from Hashem. But this knowledge that Hashem is aware of every single thing that happens does not add anything to him. Because this is only self-knowledge. And Hashem is one with his knowledge, so there's nothing extra. So this is what we have over here. So one of the big takeaways that we have from this whole idea, we talk about there's nothing other than Hashem. So up until now we were talking about how this is in terms of the worlds. In terms of the worlds, not the worlds don't have existence of their own, and the worlds are completely bottled to Hashem, whether in a way of Yichud Ilah, whether in a way of Yichud Tata, the worlds are bottled. And now this conversation today, we turned it back to Hashem. Once we understand Taka, that the worlds don't have an existence of their own, and everything in the world is only Taka, the Dvar Hashem, that leads us to the conclusion that Ani Hashem Leishon Nisi, nothing ever changed by Hashem. And this is the amazing, you want to say paradox that we have over here. On the one hand, we have all the worlds, and Hashem is intimately aware of every single detail of every single creature, and try to think about that. What kind of supercomputer it would take to keep track of the actions and behaviors of all the, we're talking again, the shilshul katan shebayam, the tiniest little insect in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and the yitush, that little mosquito or insect that's running around somewhere in the middle of the earth. Hashem is keeping track of every single thing that happens, and at the same time, there is no ribui. Nothing changed in Hashem, nothing's added to Hashem, there's no new information. Why? Because it's all Him. It's all self-knowledge. It's all the knowledge of His own creative powers, which allows it to bring it, allows everything to be. And because this is something which is very difficult for us to be able to imagine, to envision, Al Kain Amar Navi, that's taka why the Navi says, Ki gavu shamayim ma'aretz, just as the heaven is so much higher than the earth, Kain gavu drachai medarchechem, Hashem says, so too, my ways are so much higher than your ways, and my thoughts are so much greater and higher than your thoughts. And another pasuk says, if you try to understand Hashem, you try to investigate and figure out Hashem, will you actually come up with results? And the pasuk says, you have eyes of flesh. You only see the way a human being can see. Because our awareness, everything that we are aware of, is from things that are outside of us. But Hashem, He knows everything through self-knowledge, up until here, are the words of the Rambam. Now this is very interesting because the Alter Rebbe started quoting the Rambam on the earlier page, almost one page earlier. It says, Rambam Zal, and the end's over here. And most of what he's saying over here is not a direct quote from the Rambam. No. Most of his explanation over here is his own elaboration.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says, Ad kan l'shoynei. And the Rebbe has a ha'ar over here, and the Rebbe brings many rayis from different places on Chazal and Sdei Chemed. That when you're quoting something, even if you're adding your own biurim, you can still conclude by saying,
that's his word.
Ad kan l'shoynei. Yeah. So that's what the Rambam says.
But we can't understand how free will. All the rate we're saying here.
To the contrary, the Rambam saying that it's foolish to try to understand it. Not because Hashem is smarter than us, but because we're talking about quantitatively a completely different sort of intelligence.
Like a piece of wood compared to a
human being, right? Except the only thing is, the difference is that the piece of wood and the human being are both creations. So they're both, maybe not both on the scale of intelligence, but they're somewhat on the same scale. As opposed to creator and creation, don't share any scale whatsoever. It's completely off any scale that you can imagine. Ayin Shram beHilchos Yisodi HaTorah. Take a look over there in Hilchos Yisodi HaTorah. V'hiskimu imei chachmei HaKabbalah k'mevur bePardes Maramak Zal.
What's Pardes?
There's just the Ramak, Ramesha Kardavira, the teacher of the Arizal, so he wrote a sefer called Pardes Rimonim, and he agrees with the Rambam. In other words, this is something we've talked about in the past, that there is a Kabbalistic argument. The Rambam, not everyone agreed with the Rambam, and those who disagree with the Rambam says that Hashem is one with his Hu v'daiti echad, Hashem is one with his das. And there are those who disagreed and said, how can you say that? Because then if you're saying that Hashem is one with his different faculties, so then you're qualifying Hashem, you're describing Hashem, you're defining Hashem, you're limiting Hashem to Chachma, to Das. But at the end of the day, the Mekubalim agreed with the Rambam with certain conditions, but we're not going to go into this right now because we'll be talking about it in Mirz Hashem later on in Shaar Vehaemunah, later on, I believe, in the next parak. Okay, and now we are going to enter a very fascinating topic, and you might want to say even a historical topic. And this is something which, for many centuries, ever since the times of the Arizal, amongst Mekubalim, amongst the different Kabbalists, there's always been a certain large debate in the words of the Arizal. And this was one of the big areas of difference between the Alter Rebbe, the Tanya, and the Gra, the Vilna Gaon. And one of the big reasons for the Hisnagdus, for the opposition of the Gra to the Alter Rebbe, was because of the difference opinion in this Kabbalistic area. And this is called Tzimtzum, yes. The area of Tzimtzum, whether Tzimtzum is Kipshutai, or Tzimtzum is Shalei Kipshutai. Which means, in English, Tzimtzum, when we say that Hashem contracted himself, do we mean that in a literal sense, or do we mean that in a non-literal sense? So but in order to understand this debate, we have to back up a little.
How would you understand the non-literal sense?
You could probably assume that I'm going to explain this. But let's back up a little before we give a little context over here. And today, obviously, we're just beginning the topic. I will continue on in Mirz Hashem next week. Today, probably we'll only give over, actually, the side of not the Alter Rebbe, the side of the Vilna Gaon, because it's also it's actually makes sense. It's logical. It's geschmack, and there were many Gedolei Yisrael who agreed, as we'll come to see. So we know that the Arizal revolutionized Kabbalah in many ways. Perhaps his biggest chiddush, perhaps his biggest idea, and his biggest departure from the earlier Mekubalim, was that the earlier Mekubalim, they all speak about the worlds descending from Hashem, from the essence of Hashem, in a matter of cause and effect. Cause and effect, or in a way of tzimtzum. There's the original light, the Oir Ein Sof, the original infinite light of Hashem. How do we get from the infinite light of Hashem, the infinite light of Hashem to
a finite being,
to a
which is finite.
Yeah, to a finite being, to a stone, to a piece of wood, but the truth is, we're asking that, but the truth is, how do you get from there to an angel? How do you get there to the higher spiritual worlds also? Ultimately, Oir Ein Sof is the infinite light of Hashem. How do we get anything, any creation, whether physical, whether spiritual, whether mundane, whether holy, how does that ultimately emerge from Hashem? Because we know we know everything comes from Hashem, but what is the process? So the earlier Mekubalim understood this as a system of the light becomes diminished, and as we said, cause and effect, and always the effect is always weaker than the cause, until ultimately we arrive at creation. When the Arizal came, the Arizal taught something new, and he taught the idea what's called Tzimtzum Harishan. The first Tzimtzum, which the first Tzimtzum was different, again, in a qualitative way than any other Tzimtzum that follows. The Arizal taught, it's recorded in the different Svarim of the Arizal, including the Eitz Chaim, as recorded by his Talmud, Reb Chaim Vital, that originally, before the creation of the world, so the Ur Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, was Memale Kol HaChalal. You realize we're using here anthropomorphic terms over here. We're using physical terms, but we have to try to divest ourselves a little from physical and realize we're talking about spiritual entities. So the Chalal, the whole
vacuum.
The whole expanse of everything that was filled with, everything was filled with Ur Ein Sof. And therefore, there was no place in which to create the worlds. So what did Hashem do? Hashem had to make a tzimtzum, but the tzimtzum wasn't in a way that Hashem diminished the light, but rather Hashem removed the light. The words that Rizal use is silek. Silek to the tzad, he moved all the light to the side, and that left what's called a makim panoi, that left behind an empty space, and suddenly now there is place for the creation of the worlds. There's place where the world can be created. Now, again, I have to emphasize again, we're not talking about physical place because the infinite light of Hashem doesn't take up any space. We're talking about a spiritual concept entirely. Yeah?
So he made like different shades, a spectrum, or like, yeah, like.
It's hard for us to envision this, but in a deeper or in a more simple way of understanding this, as long as the infinite light of Hashem is present and is revealed, so there is no place for a limited world. We're not talking about physical place. The world in the face of the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem, the world would not, in a limited form, would not be able to exist. So there had to be the removal of this light, which is very different than everything that was talked about by their previous Kabbalists, which was in terms of the compression of the light, the minimization of the light. Here we're talking again a tzimtzum in a way of siluk, a tzimtzum which is in a way of complete removal.
You say the creation is Ein El Bevada, so it's all Dvar Hashem. So why do you need to masalik?
Let's leave it.
Creation is Hanu Hach.
Let's let the process play itself out.
I'm sorry.
Let's keep on going. So already in the generation after the Arizal, there began this argument whether tzimtzum kipshutai or tzimtzum shalai kipshutai. When the Arizal says that the light was removed, does he mean that literally or not? And different Mukubalim, some Mukubalim held like this, some Mukubalim held otherwise. Very famously, Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, and also his Bar Plukta, so Rabbi Yaakov Emden, even though we know that they disagreed on many things, but one thing they agreed upon was tzimtzum kipshutai. They agreed that the tzimtzum was literal, which we don't yet understand what that means. So we have to explain what that means, but they agreed on that. As well as others, names that you won't recognize, but Mukubalim from the 1600s and the 1700s. And the Alter Rebbe, who was following in the path of a Mukubal who wrote a sefer called Shemer Amunim, the Alter Rebbe, as we'll see soon, he advocates very, very strongly for the idea of tzimtzum shalei kipshutai and non-literal understanding of the tzimtzum. And the Alter Rebbe was joined by others. I mentioned there's the Shemer Amunim. Reb Nachman of Breslov also agreed with the Alter Rebbe. And interestingly, one of the people who ended up agreeing with the Alter Rebbe at least to a certain degree was Reb Chaim Volozhiner in his Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, and although Reb Chaim Volozhiner was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, although the Gra held of Tzimtzum Kipshutai, so Reb Chaim Volozhiner, who wrote his Sefer Nefesh HaChaim in a way as a response to Tanya, because of the popularity of Tanya, so the opponents of Chassidus felt they needed to have some sort of response. So that was a large reason why the Reb Chaim Volozhiner wrote the Nefesh HaChaim, but he himself agreed in a large, maybe not 100% completely, but in a large degree he agreed with the Alter Rebbe about Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai. In general, that's a topic all for itself, although Reb Chaim Volozhiner, although he wrote a Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, which was almost like a response to Tanya, but he himself was not really an opponent to Chassidus. In fact, he was the only one of the Talmidei Gra who didn't sign the Cherem against Chassidus. The Gra signed the Cherem, and his Talmidim signed the Cherem. Reb Chaim Volozhiner was the only one who did not sign the Cherem. And there are many, many parallels between what he writes in Nefesh HaChaim with Alter Rebbe and Tanya, although they do at times also diverge in their opinion, as is the derech of Torah. Okay, so what is this idea of Tzimtzum Kipshutai or Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai? The question was, when we say that Hashem removed His light, the Ur Ein Sof, from this, what you call the Makam Pani, the empty space, was it really removed? Was the infinite light of Hashem really removed? Or is that only an imagination from the perspective of creation, from the perspective of the recipients, but it's really there? Tzimtzum Kipshutai means that when Hashem removed His light, it's really removed. In the words of many of those who talk about it, that means obviously Hashem is still aware and cognizant of everything that happens in the world, and Hashem is mashkiach. Mashkiach means not only He's cognizant, but He's managing. But as the marshal that is brought on by these people, it's like a king who is looking out of his palace window and he's looking at the garbage dump. It would be disrespectful for the king himself to be in the garbage dump, but he's watching. He's watching. So Hashem is still, He's watching. But they felt it would be disrespectful for Hashem to say that Hashem is over here in a bathroom. It'd be disrespectful. So the infinite light of Hashem Taka isn't here. So that means Tzimtzum Kipshutai, the contraction actually literally happened, as opposed to the other view, Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai, which means that the contraction is only a perception, and it's not the ultimate reality. But we need to, once again, it's so easy when we're talking about these things to get lost in physical imaginations. When we're talking about spiritual entities don't occupy any space, and they can't be removed from a space. So, for example, if I were to tell you guys, before Pesach, I could say, please make sure this room is there's no chametz in this room. What if I were to tell you, I want you to make sure, Moshe, before Pesach, the equation 2 + 2 = 4 should not exist in this room. Let's remove it from the room. Make sure. And if we find any 2 + 2 = 4 in this room, we burn it. Make a beer chametz on it.
It's non-tangible.
That's a ridiculous statement. Why? Because 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't occupy any space. Not because it's here. Even to say that it's everywhere, it's nowhere, it's everywhere. It's not defined by the parameters of space. Talking about it in terms of space doesn't make any sense. So the notion of saying, does the infinite light of Hashem exist here or does it not exist here? The moment we understand that we're talking about something spiritual, the first thing we have to understand is we need to really change the way we're thinking about this whole thing. What does it mean it's here or it's not here?
It has no space.
Light doesn't
occupy space.
Right? It's not subject to the parameters of space or time at all. Time also. In other words, we talked about the parameters of the world of space and time. Time means something, it was, it is, it will be, and things change. The whole idea of time is change. Is 2 + 2 = 4, is it subject to time?
No.
It is. It is. It's not any particular time, it's not any particular space, it's beyond. And if that's the truth, if that's true about a spiritual concept, which is a creation, how much more so the Eir Ein Sof, which is completely above and beyond the created parameters of space and time. So when we say a spiritual thing is present in one place and it's not present in another place, what does that mean? So if I were to tell you, we all laughed when we said that 2 + 2 = 4 can't exist. You can't say take it out of this room. But at the same time, it would make sense for me to say 2 + 2 = 4 exists in my head, but it doesn't exist on my toe.
You're right.
That would make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we just said that you can't confine it to space, but suddenly I did confine it to space.
Your head.
How does that work? I could say intelligence exists in my head and it doesn't exist in this table. But intelligence is something spiritual which is not subject to the limitations of space. So why is it in my head but not in the table? And the answer is that when we're talking about something spiritual being in one place as opposed to another place, what we mean is that it's revealed in one place and not revealed in another place. It is not subject to parameters of space, but depending on the receptivity of a creation, it could be revealed there, and in another place, it won't be revealed. So another example you could say, even when we talk about the neshama, where is my neshama? So everyone's going to say, my neshama is in my body. But once again, does a neshama occupy space?
No.
So is it really accurate to say that my neshama is in my body? Yeah, it's the place that my body is where the life force of my neshama is revealed. But it's not pshat. And by the way, interestingly, so you have the idea of there's a kinyan. Daladam is shaladam koinisli. There's certain limitations, but something which is within your 4 amas, you can. And the reason what's brought down in Kabbalah for this, the reason it's brought down is because the neshama, the transcendent powers of the neshama, Hayichud, they are outside my body. They extend 4 amas, 4 cubits outside of my body. But again, these are all the neshamas revealed in my body. There are certain parts of my neshama that they're revealed in my neshama in a makiftika way, in a transcendent way. So therefore, their gilui is in the ear. Thank you very much. Therefore, their gilui is in the area around me. Let's not get lost over there. The bottom line is, when we're talking about spiritual things being present in one place as opposed to another, we don't mean that it's actually in a certain place, because spiritual things are everywhere and always. The question is, where is it revealed? Where is it felt? And that, you could take a spiritual idea and say it's present in one place, meaning revealed in one place, and it's not revealed in another place. Why is it not revealed in another place? Either because the thing didn't tune in, either because the thing doesn't have the capacity to tune into the spiritual reality. In other words, 2 + 2 = 4. It's possible that I don't know it. So even though my mind has the capacity, I might not know it. But at the end of the day, it could be revealed in my mind. So when we say that Hashem removed the Eir Ein Sof, when we say that Hashem removed the infinite light from creation, we don't mean spatially He removed it, because again, that would make no sense. That doesn't apply. So when we say that Hashem removed His light, it means that the light isn't revealed there any longer. It's no longer revealed. So you have the infinite light of Hashem, which before the creation of the world, that was the infinite light of Hashem, was what was felt and what was present everywhere. And Hashem realized, if the infinite light of the Eir Ein Sof is going to be present and felt and revealed everywhere, then there is no space for the world. Using an
But you're saying that
using an
like
example,
occupied space.
using an example of what we said. Imagine if you have a nuclear reactor. I have no idea how nuclear reactors work. Okay, but imagine that this area full of nuclear power, and I want to set my alarm clock inside it. I can't. But the alarm clock, which is this very limited, defined, you'd have to move away all that energy, the electricity, and the power, and then you can have this limited form. As long as this, again, I might be using metaphors which make no sense, but the idea is understood. As long as the infinite light of Hashem is felt and present and revealed everywhere, there is no place for limited worlds. So Hashem had to remove it, meaning Hashem had to make sure that in the limited domain of the world, it is no longer present, it is no longer felt, it is no longer experienced. Is it there? Of course it's there. Why? Because it's even silly to say it's there. Because what does it mean that it's there? Is 2 plus 2 equals 4? Is it here? The whole notion of saying the word there, by the way, implies something which is subject to space. You understand what I'm saying? If I ask you, is 2 plus 2 equals 4, is it here? It's a silly question. Because we're thinking in spatial terms. Is it here? Is it there? Is the Ein Sof there? What do you mean? It is. It is. So it's everywhere. It's nowhere. You can't remove it. It just is. But I could create something where 2 plus 2 equals 4 is not revealed, where it's not, that reality isn't felt. And that's what Hashem did when He created the worlds. And those who say that Tzimtzum is Kipshute, so they say, yeah, so that's what it is. Hashem literally removed the light. Again, when we say literally, we have to understand, we mean literally in spiritual terms. Literally remove the light means that literally this light is no longer present and revealed within limited creation. The Alter Rebbe is going to come along and say, absolutely not. Tzimtzum shalei kipshutei. The Ein Sof is here and is present and is revealed also in creation, and there's only a perception that it isn't. And now obviously that's the understanding of the Alter Rebbe is something which we have to explore more deeply. And Emir Hashem, we will start that exploration in the coming week. But I would like to conclude.
Is the thing that gives that creates the physical world, gives the energy to it. So if it's not there, so what gives it the chiyus?
Again, to be continued.
I'm sorry.
To be continued. No, I mean you could say that.
I'm trying to understand.
You could say that the energy comes from the limited light of Hashem.
But if it's not,
what I forgot.
It's been removed.
I didn't mention a certain. One maybe a very important point that I didn't mention.
Yeah,
is that when Hashem removed all the light, the next step that is brought on, that Arizal explains, is that Hashem drew into the reality of creation what's called a kav, a small little thread of light, of limited light, and that is what gives energy to all of creation. So then the question becomes, yes, but the infinite light, is the infinite light really removed or not? And that is, again, the debate which we started talking about today. Today we presented more the position of those who say that Tzimtzum is Kipshute, that Tzimtzum is Taka on a literal sense. Again, we have to be very careful when we say the word literal. When we say literal, we mean spiritually literal, not literal as a literal removal, because that there's no one of the opinion that there's a literal removal, because that would imply a complete gross misunderstanding of what Oyer is. But when we say literal, we mean that in a spiritual sense. And this whole idea, which we started talking about last week, this idea of Ein Od Milvadeh has many, many implications. This idea of Yichudei Elah, Yichud Tata. And as we mentioned several times along the course of what we're talking about, that what we're not saying over here is that Hashem is more powerful than the world. And therefore, the world is bottled to Hashem because the world isn't as powerful as Hashem. And Hashem therefore can override and overrule nature and overrule the world. All of that is not Achdus Hashem. That's not the unity of Hashem, is that the world itself, in all of its parameters, actually is an expression of Hashem. That's Hashem hu Elokim, Havaya hu Elokim, is as we've spoken about. And this idea finds expression in this week's parsha also, as always. And not only does it find expression in this week's parsha, but it also finds expression in the day of today. Today is a very special day. Today is Hey Teves, which in Lubavitch is celebrated as somewhat of a Yom Tov. It is the day when 33 years ago. So the Rebbe and Lubavitch won a court case regarding the Sfarim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and a day on which the Rebbe encouraged that we observe it and celebrate it by buying Sfarim. So downstairs today, after class, I'm sure there's going to be big discounts on the Sfarim that are downstairs. Is that correct, Rabbi Moshe?
Yeah, steep discount.
Steep discounts, yeah.
It's also Rabbi Morozov.
Morozov's birthday.
Today.
Yeah. His Rabbi Morozov's bar mitzvah was 33 years ago. Yeah.
He said the steep discounts ain't safe.
Wow. Anyways, here in Crown Heights today, all the Sfarim stores are a big madhouse, and with sales, and everyone's buying Sfarim, and it's 70. It's full of.
They have to make Hey David 5 times a year.
They make it 5 times a year.
That's right.
It's big size.
It wasn't such a big discount that I wanted.
What? They have the decent discounts in the farm stores. They have it.
I went to class. There wasn't. Some was 5%, some was 20%.
Okay.
But there's a lot of stuff there that's 40% also. A lot of stuff that's 40%, 30%. You have. Anyways, Akapanim is definitely cheaper than other times of the year. And this week's parsha begins with Vayigash Elav Yehuda. So we have over here a real meeting of titans. The meeting of the two Aroyos, the two lions, Yehuda and Yosef. They're both kings. Yosef is the king of Mitzrayim, Mishnah Lamelech, and Yehuda is the king of his brothers. And by the way, this rivalry is something which will continue for many, many centuries. As we know that although David HaMelech became the king and then Shlomo HaMelech took over, but in the times of Shlomo's son Rechavam, so the northern 10 Shvatim seceded and they appointed themselves a king, Yeravam, who was from which Shevet? From Ephraim. And in fact, the Haftarah of this week's parsha is a nevuah from Yirmiyah? Yecheskel? That the Eibishter tells him, take for yourself 2 sticks, and write on one of them write Yehuda, and one of them write Yosef, and then put them together, and miraculously they're going to become one. The 2 sticks are going to become one. Yeah, and then go tell the Yidden, show this to Yidden, and tell the Yidden, the day will come when Yehuda and Yosef will once again be reunited, because even though at that time there was a schism amongst the kingdoms, they'll be united. And V'David Avdi, Nasi, Lahem Lo'olam, at that time they will be united, but united under the kingship of who? Under the kingship of David. So we have, in the beginning of this week's parsha, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches Yosef. And then in the Haftarah we have also Vayigash Elav, the 2 sticks, the stick of Yehuda and the stick of Yosef coming together also. So we know that the Haftarah is supposed to be Me'ein HaParsha. The Haftarah is supposed to be similar to the Teuchen of the Parsha. So it seems we have here the Teuchen. But the Rebbe speaks about this in Asichan. The Rebbe says, because the Rebbe is a very big stickler for details, it's not enough that things are almost perfect, but everything has to be perfect, mamish. The Rebbe says, what do you mean? You're telling me that this is the same idea? It's not. Because in the beginning of this week's parsha, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, who's the primary one and who's the secondary one? Yosef is the primary one, and Yehuda is the secondary, and he's coming saying, Bi Adoini, he's begging by the master. And in the Haftarah Taka, we have Yehuda and Yosef coming together, but over in the Haftarah, who's the primary one? V'David Avdi. Nasi Lahem, David Avdi is going to be the Melech. David is the Melech. So how can we say the Haftarah is a perfect reflection of the parsha? So the Rebbe analyzes the parsha and says, Yehuda and Yosef, who over here showed a greater strength? Who was Taka the stronger one? Yes. Superficially, it would seem that Yosef was. On the other hand, Yosef was acting under the mandate that he received from Pare. Pare made him the Mishnah of Allah. Pare made him second in command, and Pare was very clear. Right? But everything that happens in the country, you're under control. So Yosef was acting 100% according to the norms, the customs, the conventions, and the law of the land. So he was exerting power, but it was power which was, you might want to say, normal power. It was following the normal the normal structure and the normal conventions. Yehuda comes along over here, and he completely destroys convention. With Vayigash Elav Yehuda, Yehuda comes and says, "You're the king. You're the king, and I'm the subject. But nevertheless, I'm defying all the conventions." And he went straight over to Yosef. And as we know, Vayigash, he was ready to go to battle if necessary. And what he was doing, and that's why he says, "Vayicha Rabcha Bavdecha." Don't get angry, because he knew that he was totally acting out of line. So in a way, Yehuda shows over here strength that Yosef didn't. Yehuda says, "I might be in Golus, but at the same time, you can't contain me. With all your rules that you have, you can't contain me. I am going to do things the way that Hashem wants. And yes, I'm recognizing Golus, which is why I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you as the king. But at the same time, I'm disregarding Golus, and I'm realizing the power that Hashem has given me." And this is something, interestingly, which was continued in the generations that followed. When we have Ish Yehudi. Ish Yehudi, so there was a person whose name was Mordechai. As you know, that Mordechai was from the Shevet of Binyamin. And even though the Shevet of Binyamin, he's called Ish Yehudi. He's called from Yehuda. Why? Because he's also Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishnachava. Mordechai says, I could be in Golos from today to tomorrow, but I'm not moving. But when it comes to Torah, when it comes to mitzvahs, there is no compromise. It's going to be exactly the way it's supposed to be, and which was the same attitude as of Yehuda. This is a much greater strength than the strength of Yosef, because Yosef ultimately, he was just executing the strength that he was given by Pare. Whereas Yehuda, you might want to say, was going extracurricular strength. He was disregarding the norms and saying, I might be in Golos, Akati Avdi Achashverosh Shanan, to paraphrase the Gemara and Megillah, we might still be subjects of Pare. But when it comes to a Yiddish king, when it comes to Binyamin, or when it comes to Avodah Zarah, la yichra v'la yishtachva, there is no bending. There's no bending a drop. And what ended up happening in both of those instances, their way was vindicated. Because Havayahu Alekim. Because we don't need to have miracles. Going back to we spoke, because ultimately Teva itself also will allow the Yid to be a Yid. And ultimately when you stand up to Teva, when you stand up to the king, you know what you're going to find out? The king is Yosef. That's what you're going to find out. Or you'll become the king. Because the recognition that Teva itself, even when we're in Golus, Teva itself is also Elikus. And this is something which is expressed also in Heitevis. And this really is the crux of the miracle of Heitevis. So in just a little the backstory of Heitevis. As you know, that the previous Rebbe, he left over a huge library of Sfarim. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, he had 3 daughters. One of them was killed with her husband in the Holocaust. One of them married the Rebbe, and one of them had one child, and that child was the only grandson of the previous Rebbe, so he decided that he's appropriating for himself some of the books.
He went off the derech, he was...
Yeah.
They say that he went off.
Anyways, yeah, so he took some of the books. The Rebbe was very upset, and the Rebbe was, we can't take the books. Those didn't belong to the Rebbe as an individual.
It was community property.
Yeah. Belongs to Chassidim.
I see the community.
You know, when they deposed the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughter, they asked, who did this farm belong to? And she answered very powerfully, and this was very persuasive in court. She said, "This farm belonged to the Chassidim because my father also belongs to the Chassidim." She said.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. What's a Rebbe? A Rebbe, what?
That's the mother. She's the mother of the guy.
No. That's the Rebbe's wife. The Rebbe's wife. She was deposed.
It's the daughter of the Friedrich.
Now here's so this ended up in court, but there were a lot of Chassidim who were very worried about it. You know, why would a goyish judge
Make a determination.
No, it's okay. It was just pretty simple. He had Sfarim, he had two daughters. You divide it into two. This whole spiritual argument that no, a Rebbe is different and personal property doesn't apply to a Rebbe, and what a Rebbe has really belongs to the Chassidim. A goyish judge is going to accept that argument. And
Why did they go to the Torah?
they wanted to. He didn't want to go.
He didn't want to.
Yeah. So there were Chassidim who came to the Rebbe and they told the Rebbe, let's pull this out of court. He doesn't want this farm. He wants money, because that's what he was doing. He was selling this farm. So let's just we'll pay him. We'll pay him off. We'll get the books, and everything's good. And this way, you're not going to risk losing everything in court.
Lose the case in
Yeah. And the Rebbe was so upset at that suggestion. And the Rebbe said, Chas v'shalom, we're not doing that at all. What you're saying is that the emes of Torah and the emes of Hashem can't be reflected in the reality of this world, and I don't accept that. Don't accept that. Havaya, the Rebbe didn't say these words, Havaya Elikim. No, the world itself is going to ratify the emes of Torah and the emes of Yiddishkeit. And we're going to court. We're not paying him. Because paying him, in essence, is an admission that the world and the Eibishter are at odds with each other. And they went to court, and we all know they won. A Goyish judge, he passed away a few years ago, and they won everything. And he appealed, and they won again. They won it, and every single sefer, I think they got back. And every single time, you know, when the Rebbe would when they would write about Hey Tevis, so it was always when the Rebbe would edit it, like if they would release, let's say, a mimer, it was always the day when they were Zoicha b'mishpat in the Beis Mishpat Federali, in the federal court case. That was such an important thing to add in, because that is part of the Geder, the identity of this Yom Tov is that the Goyish judge in the federal court decided that Torah is emes. And that's an expression. That's an expression of Havayu Elikim, this absolute Emunah. Yes, we could be in Galus. Yehuda knew he was in Galus, but ultimately, a Yid even in Galus is higher than Galus, and the ideals of Torah will always win out in the end. Good Shabbos, everyone. And to be continued next week, more on the topic of Tzimtzum.